Good evening, welcome to the first live Subaru Q&A session of 2025. Where the hell has that year gone? But we're here, first one. Hopefully there's people watching. I can see that a few people have said hi already, so fabulous. If you haven't joined me before for one of these, it is just a free-for-all. Basically, any questions Subaru related, fire it at me. I will do my very best to answer it. Try and keep it on topic as much as I can. But if you're asking a question, please put a Q at the beginning, because then I can actually identify a question rather than a comment or a whatever you. So yeah, put a Q at the beginning. Ask any question you like. I will try and answer it. These are normally quite manic towards the end, so try and get your questions in early. That way you stand a very good chance of getting the question answered. At the end it becomes a bit patchy because there's a bit of a delay between you asking a question and me seeing it on my screen. So yeah, get it on the screen early. And yeah, we're here, 2025. I hope everyone had a good Christmas, good New Year. If you're doing dry January, then good luck. I won't be. But yeah, if you're new here, I'm Duncan. I tune Subarus for a living. I do it almost every day of the week. And if I'm not tuning other people's Subarus and I'm messing around with my own, or just generally being involved in the Subaru world, hence why the YouTube channel, to try and share a bit of what I've learned over the years. Hopefully it helps you. Yeah, any questions, fire them at me. Whether that be tuning related, parts, cars, modifications, problems, check engine light issues, anything. So yeah, I can see I've got a few people here already, which is great. Hi Neil. -6 there up in Glasgow tonight. Blimey. I think it's 0 here at the moment down in sunny Bournemouth, which is not sunny. It is freezing cold. That's certainly very cold for us down here. Hi Ankit, greetings from East Africa. Hello Ankit, hi mate. Hi Don, hi Mashika, Manuel, Zed, Mel, Paul, Shane, hi, Grant, hi, good evening. Right, so what have you got? What do you want? What do you need to know? What do you want to ask me? It amazes me every time they do one of these as to where people are from. So if you haven't got a question, say hi as to where you're from, what you drive, join in the chat, because the people in here, there's no nasty people, there's no people that put other people down. It is an entirely positive community, which is what I want. I don't want people to be scared to ask a question for fear of being labelled as stupid or whatever. I don't judge on a question. I've been asked questions multiple times. I don't judge. I might laugh, but mainly about cylinder 4 cooling mod. But yeah, ask me a question, far away. -4 in Switzerland at the moment. Okay, that's not so bad. Not so bad. Hopefully it's snowing out there and the ski season can be productive for the economy. Right. I had a question before I go into questions from other people. I had a question from one of the academy members, like the academy that I run for guys that want to learn how to tune their own cars. And it was quite an interesting question. I didn't comment on it particularly in the Discord group, but I just wanted to sort of run into it now. And the question was, is there a way of using the aircon to cool the intercooler, and is it worth it? It's a thought that I've had over the years. I haven't actually done anything about it myself. I haven't tested it myself, but all I know is with the Subaru ECU and with most of the aftermarket ECUs like Link or the Cyvex, most of the time they're set up for the aircon to get switched off when you're on full throttle, and that is pretty much when you'd want the cooling for an intercooler. So from that aspect, it's not worth it because it would be switching off when you wanted it. But even if you could force it to sort of come on board, the extra benefit from what is essentially a pretty inefficient system wouldn't really offset the extra drain on the engine and the loss of power from running the aircon. So it's an interesting idea, but the system isn't efficient, so it wouldn't really work very well, even if the ECU let the aircon work. Running cryogenic coolers or nitrous does work, but there is cost and sort of complexity involved in that. So yeah, it's an interesting idea. Cold air makes more power. Right, so Forester SDI up and or fully running yet? Yes, it is. It's had the final oil change, and it will be going on the dyno very shortly. I was trying to get it on there today, but I had issues with that, so won't go into that. But it was not to do with the car; it was about something else. So yeah, it will be very soon, and there will be a video coming on that. But yeah, I've got loads of content at the moment. Got 3 or 4 videos at the moment that I'm editing, so lots coming up. Yeah, what's dry January? Yeah, in this house, I think we lasted a few hours, but yeah, New Year's Day was an almighty hangover. But there we go. Right. Right, so you're going to mount the ProDrive second part of the cat. What should you look at the data login? Right, the thing with exhaust restrictions, and I count cats and silences, is that the more restrictions you add in there, it's going to have an impact on boost control. So if you're adding restrictions, it's going to make less boost, or you're going to have to work harder to create the same boost. And also it kind of reduces the flow out of the engine. So if there is a lot of back pressure, then the engine can't get rid of the old dead air. And if it can't get rid of the old dead air, it can't get new, fresh, oxygen-filled air into the engine. So it will always make less power, and it will always be more inclined to detonate with more of a restriction in there. So normal things with the data login: check the boost control, check for detonation. I know that you've got deck cans, so put those on, see whether it's happy with it. If it's happy with it and the fueling's fine, then great. But just normal data logging for that. Right. Right. Okay. You can do that. Sorry, I'll read out the question. Does the turbo banjo bolt hole need some drilling to increase the diameter from 1mm standard to 2.5, 3mm for better oil flow? It depends on the aftermarket turbo. If the aftermarket turbo is roller bearing, then it doesn't need much oil flow. It's not using the oil for cooling. It's only using it for lubrication. So the aftermarket turbos, like a Garrett core or something, would only have a very small 1mm restrictor in the oil banjo. A sleeve bearing turbo like a 20G or a TD04 or whatever would have a larger diameter hole in the banjo bolt. So if you're needing the larger diameter for a sleeve bearing, a bigger sleeve bearing turbo, then it's best to probably get one from that the turbo manufacturer recommends. Right, is there or have you mapped a Subaru with a variable vane turbo, or is there not such a thing in the Subaru world? I haven't seen one in the Subaru world. We're just pretty old fashioned, and you want more power, you put on a bigger turbo. You want it to spool early, then put on a smaller turbo, or chuck some nitrous in there. Or variable count timing, those kind of things. Pretty old school on a Subaru, which is one of the reasons why I like them. The variable vane turbos are supposedly really good, but I haven't tested it on a Subaru, and I'm not sure how it would work on a Subaru. I like the fact that they're pretty simple. Right. Okay, I will cover this one. Hi, John. Don't recognise the name. I don't think you've asked a question before, but correct me if I'm wrong. Hi, Duncan. How harmful is lift-off debt, and what is the best way to tackle it? Version 7 UK STI. Debt is never good, but debt on load is more of an issue. So if it is genuinely when it's off load, then not really much of a problem. But if it's just as you're lifting off, i.e. the injectors are shutting down, then it might be worth, like if it's at the red line or something, taking a little bit of timing out of that point just to protect it from seeing that. Ideally, you're actually hearing detonation on deck cans rather than trusting the ECU, because the ECU is not reliable enough, in my opinion, to be able to tune a Subaru. You need deck cans. Fernando, hi, hola, buon noite. What do you think of the Haltech Nexus R5? Haltech's a really good ECU. It's just, in the UK, they're not used an awful lot. It's in the UK, it tends to be either Link or Cyvex. Haltech is something that is more prominent as sort of Australia, New Zealand, and also North America. I try not to give customers too many choices, if that makes sense. So, it's either the standard ECU, Link or Cyvex, but if you start adding lots of different options in there, then it can get quite confusing for people, and making a decision is a lot more difficult for them. So it's not something that I've had much experience with, but I've tuned Haltech's, and the R5 is a good piece of kit. From what I've seen, I think it's a joint PDM kind of CAN bus ECU, which will be really high spec and I'm sure work really well. Right, hi Neil. When I did the videos on my other Fozzy on the changing the centre of back boxes, did that affect the map on it? And according to your videos, made no extra power but some extra torque. Yeah, I was able, because the standard cat in the middle there, or no, the standard resonator in the middle is pretty restrictive. I was able to add a little bit of extra timing. I didn't show it in the video because like the previous video on the Forester SH, it was too long, so I was trying to keep the video short. It made no extra power because the power is limited by the turbo. Effectively, it's a really tiny turbo, but a bit of extra timing in the mid-range actually gave, you know, 15-20 pounds per foot of torque, so it was well worth it. Power at the top end, that's just going to have to be a change of turbo if I was that way inclined, which I might be, but that'll be later on in the year. Right. What software is needed to delete TGVs from the ECU on an 06 Hawkeye WRX? You can do that with ROM Raider or ECU Flash. I use ECU Edit for pretty much all of the open source tuning, but ECU Flash and ROM Raider are free, and assuming your car hasn't been mapped before with Ecotech, then you'll be able to get into the ECU with those. You'll be able to switch off the codes. Probably I'd recommend ECU Flash to do that because I think it's more reliable. And you can switch off the codes, put it back on the car. Obviously make sure that you're following the right process for doing that, because if you interrupt the flash, then you can brick the ECU, and that's never fun. Welcome. Hi Sam. Make sure you log into the Discord group and sort of say hi in there. Right, recently fixed boost leak found at the throttle body gasket. Car now runs really rich, 13 AFR when in closed loop and idles leaner. Is that logical? Right, at the throttle body gasket. Yeah, that's kind of after the if you can be sure that there's no more leaks now, then yeah, I would probably say that you need to sort of go through the fuel map tuning, possibly even the boost control side of things again. Yeah, generally if you've got a leak after the turbo but before the throttle body, then the car will run rich. So if you tune for that condition and then you fix the leak, it will run a lot leaner. After the throttle body, you get some weird things, particularly like inlet manifolds when you've got one side of it that's leaking. Yeah, I'd go into the map again. If you're doing it yourself, it'll be pretty straightforward. Yeah, Mashika, I think it'd be worth it. The Pro Drive has got less restrictions, and less restrictions is always going to be better. Obviously, depending on legality, wherever you are, I'm guessing in Switzerland it's not going to be legal to take cats out, but you know, the Sports Cat systems, the Pro Drive Sports Cat is awesome. It's still the best one, better than all the aftermarket ones. And they seem to last well. Right, hi Craig. What software hardware is needed to delete TGVs and secondary air pump on a Hawkeye WRX? Yeah, secondary air pump always fails, and yeah, it's I think it's about £1,200 to replace the air pump system, and it does bugger all. So switching off the codes for that is pretty simple. You need a Tactrix cable, a proper genuine Tactrix cable, open port 2.0, and a laptop, obviously, which has got a decent battery charge or power connector, and ECU Flash will do that. You'll be able to download the ROM that's on there, make changes by switching off the check engine lights for the TGV and the secondary air pump, and then flash it back on. Right, I think I missed a couple in here. Hi Lynn, what a new age. I think it's actually Mark, isn't it? New age R160 rear diff be a good upgrade for a UK 2000 GC8. I'm not sure it's going to make much of a difference, to be honest. It depends on the diff ratio as to whether you'll be able to use it or not, but it's not really my area of expertise. Yeah, I honestly I can't hand on heart say either way on that one, I'm afraid. Sorry. Right, Paul, advantages of a screamer pipe. It's just sound effects, really. I'm personally, like my time attack compressor, I had external wastegate on that, but the screamer pipe, I plumbed that back into the exhaust, because it's quieter, and using it on track there are noise limits, and it's really frustrating going to a track day and then getting chucked off for noise. I don't think there's any advantage from a power point of view, because the air that's coming out of the screamer pipe is basically the air that is not going through the turbo, so tends to be like the controlled air, if you get what I mean, rather than the air that's actually genuinely driving the turbo. So if you were using all of the boost that the turbo could produce, then there would be nothing coming out the screamer. There's no advantages of a screamer pipe. It's just sound effects and scaring people, that's all. Right. Boom, boom, boom. Seeing a bouncy AFR while cruising, stays between 14.3 and 15.1. Pretty sure I just need to dial in the math, but is this safe? If you data logged a standard car, it would be doing exactly the same. You could spend days, weeks, months, years going down that rabbit hole and trying to fine tune your maths to make it absolutely steady. It will not do it. It's doing what it's designed to do. It's the feedback that it gets from the standard narrowband sensor is pretty crude, in that it says, right, add more fuel, take more fuel, or take fuel away. So it will do that, and it will always bounce. So there is nothing you can do about that. So I wouldn't even waste much time. The important thing is it's not long-term learning. Like, you've got the short-term trims, which are fine, but if the long-term trim sort of goes outside of, let's say, 5%, then you want to correct for that in the math curve. But the fact that it's bouncing, they'll do that. Is what it's supposed to do. Boom, boom, boom. Right, Shikuraman. I have a GC8. Is it worth doing the new age coil on plug conversion? Yes, it is. The new age coil on plug is the best option for a clean spark, and clean sparks make better power, and it's more reliable. If you've got the early coils on a like version 1, version 2, like the coil and plug, then they are extremely unreliable. The ends of them crack for fun. Most misfires on a version 1.2 are related to the ends of the coils just cracking under the rubber sleeve. If you've got the central or the offset coil pack on the version 3.4 or the offset on the version 5.6, then heat and just general wear and tear on the coil pack just degrades over time. The new age coils are really, really reliable. I'm seeing quite a few fail at the moment, but they are 20 years old now, so 20 years is not bad for a coil pack to last. So yeah, fitting new coils, perfect. ICP cell, like a very good replacement standard item, which is as good as the originals. Let me just grab a drink. Right. How are we doing time-wise? Right, okay, cool. Genesis Arc Abstracts. Okay, hi Duncan. I'm thinking of porting headers, but in doing some research, some people port turbo too. You've got a EJ205 VF28 sportive mods. Right. Generally, like, porting the turbo is only needed, in my opinion, if you're getting a lot of boost creep from the turbo. So let's say you were doing a wastegate only pressure run, and the wastegate is supposed to be 0.5 bar, for example. If you found that the boost started off at half a bar, 0.5 bar, 7 psi, and then start going up at the end up to up to a bar or whatever, but basically was creeping up, by porting the exhaust side of the turbo, you can actually reduce that. So porting around the wastegate penny hole, and making sure that it obviously still seals, it will actually sort of keep that boost steady. So if you find that your turbo is creeping and going up uncontrollably, then it might be worth doing that. On a VF28, I would think that's very unusual if it was, so I wouldn't bother. It's a lot of work, but porting the headers, I think it's worthwhile. There we go, Lynn. So yeah, Neil knows. Same diff, but needs different shafts. Right. Yeah, bouncy air fire. They'll all do it. There is not one ECU, even a Cyvex fully set up, it will always try and trim it. It's just the nature of the beast. Yeah, they can be absolutely fine, but there are lots of reasons to change away from a single coil. If the coil breaks or the coil the HT leads start degrading, then you're going to get spark issues. Right, how do you become a premium member? There is a little join button. It's probably down there, actually, down there. Click on that and there's some options. Academy member is what you want to be if you want to see the extra videos, get access to the Discord server for chat and advice. So yeah, click on that. Right, anything else in there? Questions wise, have I missed anyone? Right, Ben. Hi, Ben. Right, Hawkeye 07 WRX and the 06 WRX. Can you flash either on either car? I try not to. I try and personally, if I've read an ECU or ROM off an ECU, I will always flash that same ROM ID back onto the ECU. I haven't tried it, to be perfectly honest. I'm sure on Ectech you can flash there is just one for the Hawkeye WRX. But let me double check that, Ben, and I'll message you tomorrow. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, it may well be a very good setup for your car, Fernando. The Haltech CAN bus side of things works really well. They've got a good range of bits that go in there, like keypads and the like the expanders. So it might be a really good option. Right, how about when I put STI injectors in, how can you drive to me? Right, I can't remember which video I covered this in. I think it was probably one of the Subaru myths ones that I did. People will say, oh, if you put in STI injectors in there, it's going to bore wash. You need to get the car trailered to wherever it gets mapped. That's rubbish. If you're going from standard WRX injectors, 420cc, up to 550cc STI injectors, your lambda sensor and the closed loop fueling corrections will be able to correct for that, no problem at all, for when you're on cruise. Because when you're cruising, it will make closed loop corrections. It will say, oh, I'm rich, I'll take some fuel out. And it'll be able to take about 25% fuel out to keep it sort of running roughly right. But when you go full throttle or half throttle, the closed loop fueling switches off and it just reverts to what's in the map for the size of the injectors and for the MAF curve, and it will drown, it will splutter and cough. So if you're driving to mapping off boost, it'll be absolutely fine. Okay, you've got hold of a stock ROM with TinyRex patch. Okay. Message me later, Ben. We'll chat about these things. Because the TinyRex patches, you can unpatch them or patch different ECUs, but I've got most of those TinyRex patches, so maybe we can touch base on that. Right. Boom, 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 boom. Right. I had this question a little while back. The throttle body coolant feed delete, is it worth it? I did some testing of this on my own car years ago. If you don't know what it is, at the back of the engine there's a in and out feed for the throttle body. Basically it feeds hot coolant through the throttle body to stop it icing up, apparently. But in doing that, it's heating that throttle body, it's heating the air that goes through it, it seems a bit of a waste after you've cooled the air going through the intercooler and now you're heating it up again to go into the engine. I removed it on mine. I had an intake temperature sensor placed just before the throttle body, just to measure what the temperature of the air was doing before and after I did the coolant feed delete. And while on boost, it makes no difference whatsoever. But when you're on and off the throttle, when the throttle's closed, the air is kind of backing up there a bit and heats up more, so you get more. When you're going back onto the throttle, you get a big gulp of hot air going into the engine. Whereas when you remove the throttle feed, coolant feed, then the air that goes in is not heated. So There is, in my opinion, a good reason to delete it. It helps with the response. Obviously, those sort of things couldn't be tested or quantifiable as far as a dyno sheet is concerned, but certainly from a measured temperature point of view, it did make a big difference. There was a few degrees of temperature difference. Right, is it right? I am planning to bring my GC8 to you for mapping. Is it safe to drive with the current mods like VF35 turbo, decat, full exhaust, 340 fuel pump, front mount intercooler from Manchester? Right, okay, I'll go through those one at a time. A bigger turbo, the car or the ECU won't know anything about it if you're not on boost. So if you're off boost, it's fine, absolutely fine, no problem whatsoever. Same with the decat full exhaust. Off boost, the car can cope with pretty much anything. The only thing that's going to do, if you went on boost, it's going to boost a hell of a lot quicker, and it could be quite dangerous, particularly as you've got a bigger turbo now. So off boost, it's fine. Bigger fuel pump is not going to make any difference. The actual fuel going into the engine is controlled by the fuel pressure regulator and how long the injectors are open for. So the fact you've got a slightly bigger fuel pump there isn't going to really make much of a difference. And off boost, as I said before, the fuel corrections will be able to control and keep it on the right sort of lines. Front mount intercooler is not going to cause an issue. The only thing that can cause an issue is the fact that with the front mount, you'd have had to have fit a induction kit, and the size of the induction pipe and the bit around the MAF sensor can make a difference to how much air it measures going into the engine. And if it makes a difference to the amount of air that goes into the engine, it's making a difference to how much fuel it wants to put in there. But off boost shouldn't be a problem whatsoever, because the closed loop lambda and the closed loop fuel corrections are just going to keep it pretty much drivable. It might have the odd hiccup, but it'll certainly be drivable. If you've got no leaks or air leaks, particularly if you're fitting a front mount intercooler, fit them, do up the pipe work, and then after a couple of days redo up the pipe work, because they always loosen a bit. And that's really annoying when they come off on the dyno, because it's always the one at the bottom. That's no problem at all. Yeah, book it in. Right, hi Winston. Right, okay, yes, your ECU. I spoke to Ecotech the other day about your ECU. They'll do it on the rig and take off the Ecotech license so that you can then access it using ECU Flash or ECU Edit. Best way to make the map safe. I went in. I did a video for the Academy members, which you are one. Which went through the process of putting together a base map, a starting point map. So, knocking the boost back, taking out a little bit of ignition timing for safety, and just the little steps just to get yourself to a position where it's safe enough to drive and start mapping it. So have a watch of that video. But that was basically it. Start from wastegate pressure, start from a few degrees of ignition timing off, and build up from there, little baby steps, and take it up safely. It's always better to start from a safe position than giving it all the boost, trying to do a map with all the boost, all the ignition, and then with a box picking up your bits of pistons and what have you. Right, you're measuring oil temperature from the rear oil gallery under the intercooler. Is it normal to see about 95 Celsius at cruising? Yeah, it probably is. Probably nearer 90, but it depends on the gauge as to how the read and what the sensor is and all the rest of it. I've fitted so many different sensors over the years, and they all read weirdly different values. So I wouldn't be particularly concerned with 95 degrees. If it was reading 130, then I'd be having issues. Super Mario. Hi Duncan, can you tell me what would be the max limit of EGT when you're tuning the Subaru? It varies. Most of the Subarus that I'm tuning haven't got EGT sensors, so it's not something that I really see an awful lot of when I'm tuning. Generally, you want to keep that as low as possible, but you can. Higher EGTs can be from running rich as well as from running lean. Can be from, you can have high EGTs from high ignition timing and low ignition timing, high boost, different fuels. So yeah, it's a difficult thing to answer, I'm afraid. Right, ticking, rattling sound from my car. Emanuela. Running a stage 1 cob tune, what can be the issue? Ticking, rattling sound. I would need to know where the sound was coming from. Ticking, there's always ticking. Valve cam followers, they will always tick depending on what the gaps are on those. You can have quite a noisy ticking. Rattles, not quite so nice. Depends where it's coming from. I'd want to investigate where they're coming from. Make a set of the deck cans and bolt that onto various parts of the engine and just see whether you can locate where it's coming from. Right. Another thing I've been thinking about as I live up in the mountains, anything you need in the tune that needs to be looked at for the elevation changes of 5,100 feet where you are. Wow. Okay. There are, in the ECU ROMs, there's different boost cuts for atmospheric pressure. So you'll find with the higher altitude, the atmospheric pressure will be lower. So at sea level, like we are here, atmospheric pressure is around a bar. Depends on weather conditions, but generally around a bar. At that sort of altitude, you're probably at 0.8 bar, so you'd need to make sure that your boost limits and boost cuts are indicative for what the actual boost would be at that altitude. Bear in mind that the ECU in most cases will target an absolute pressure, so it will include air pressure in the boost target. So you probably want to make sure that it's boosting correctly. It's going to be difficult to sort of get everything absolutely perfect for sea level as well as 5,100 feet up in the air. But the main things is if it's debt free, test it for debt at the top of the mountains and test it all the way down or all the way up, and it should be fine. Right. Right, evening. Hi, Kyle. Right, evening, Duncan. RJ is currently building your engine now. How many miles should I run her in for before you map it? 2.5 Hawkeye. Ask RJ. If RJ is giving you a warranty on it, then you have to go by what he's telling you. I could tell you something completely different. You could follow what I say, and then RJ might, not warranty it. And always keep your engine builder happy. What he's saying, go. So if he says, 1,000 miles at XYZ, then do what he's saying. Rattling sound from the front of the engine. I would want to be taking the cam covers off if you're getting a rattling sound from the front of the engine. It could be a cam belt tensioner that's about to let go. It could be the little guide over the top of the crank pulley that is loose and could at any point dig into the cam belt, rip the cam belt, take the whole engine out. I'd be taking the covers off and actually finding the rattle. Hi Craig, getting rid of the modine on Hawkeye, yeah, good idea. Definitely recommend a thermostatic oil cooler sandwich plate. It'll run too cold in the winter, and it's not actually good for it to run too cold. I have an issue with like the orange time attack car on the dyno was running too cold, so I was having to jump out and switch the fans off to get the oil temperature back up to where we needed it for doing the runs. And if it runs too cold or the engine runs too cold, then you'll need to correct like the warm up enrichment and those kind of things, so it will run richer. And then if you tune for the richer conditions and then it gets hotter and you end up running leaner, and that's not ideal. So definitely thermostatic. Yep, heat shields on the front crossover pipe. Heat shields are a big issue on most of the standard headers. Pond flip, 07 Forester STI, mapped when he got to the UK, consistently hitting 1.1 bar in the summer, but in the cold weather it's peaking at 1.3 and settling around 1.2. Should you be worried? Not especially, but it would be worth making sure that it's not detting. So if you can make a set of deck gans and bolt it onto the engine just to make sure it's happy, would be worth it. A little bit of overboost in the cold weather is it's not entirely normal, but it's not unusual. So if it was hitting 1.5 bar, then I'd have a real problem with it. It depends who's mapped it and how robust the map is. But I'd guess that's fine. But a set of deck cams, you'll know for sure whether it's happy. Hey, hi Robert, welcome finally, and you're welcome. Kyle, can you have anti-loud map on yours with the standard ECU? It's possible, but it's complicated. And I'd need to chat with you because there are sort of flip sides to it. So give me a shout once the car's running. We can talk about it. Hello, Subaru Life. Would I drive it with the deck cans on? Yes. Yeah, when I map on the road, I'm wearing deck cans always. When I'm driving, I tend to only have one ear in the deck cans because it is actually illegal to wear headphones while you're driving in the UK, even though most road laws are thoroughly ignored. Particularly sat navs that are right bloody in the middle of the screen, that people, I don't know how they can even see where they're going. But anyway, that's a rant. I won't go ranting. Yes, I would drive with deck cans. You need to be sure. If you're asking a question, make a set of deck cans. They're really easy to make. I've got a video on it. Watch the video. The bits are cheap and they work incredibly well and they're incredibly useful. Right, what oil pressure do you generally see it tick over on EJs? Running temperature standard 2.5 bottom end. It depends on the oil. The actual oil thickness and the make of the oil will vary what the oil pressure is. If you're running like a 1040 synthetic oil, you're probably on a hot engine, probably 2 bar of oil pressure. If you're running like a 1550, like I used to run on the race car, the Motor 300V 1550, then maybe 2.5 bar. Again, it depends what the idle is, but on yours, it probably idles at about 800 perhaps. Subaru in their specifications say it's fine if it's got more than 1 bar at idle. Personally, I think that's way too low. But if you're judging oil pressure, what you want to be looking at is whether there's any changes in the oil pressure. If it was idling at 3 bar of oil pressure, at let's say 85 degrees oil temperature, i.e. up to temperature, and it's now idling at 2 bar and you haven't changed the oil type, then there's something that needs investigating. So it's not necessarily the absolute values that are important, it's changes. Have I seen a Litchfield Forester SE ISU from a facelift? All it is a standard Forester ECU that's got a Litchfield map on it, and they weren't that good. So personally, I don't think it's worth it. You're not going to get any extra features. You're going to get an ECU that was mapped for a different car that won't be suitable for running on your car. I wouldn't do it personally. You don't need the Ecotec license, so yeah, you're not going to gain anything, in my opinion. Yeah, good Christmas and I think I can vaguely remember New Year. But yeah, it was a long session. Right, so hot oil idle at 800, 3.4 bar on 1050. Yeah. So yeah, they're normal sort of figures. On the 2.5 engine that I used to have in the time attack car when that was kind of originally new, when I had an issue with the oil pickup pipe, that oil pressure at idle dropped down quite dramatically. So what I was saying about changes in oil pressure, so let's say it was idling at 2 bar, when the fracture in the pickup pipe at the front started happening, then the idle went down to about 1 bar of oil pressure. Not ideal. And the engine went very shortly after that. How are we doing time-wise? Right, 5 minutes left. Sharpest Maximus, is upgrading the radiator necessary, and if so, at what point do you suggest doing it and suggest brands? No, not in my opinion. Most of the aftermarket ones are a pain in the arse. If you cut one open and look inside and look at the welding, it's pretty appalling. I ran on my time attack car, the standard radiator up to 850 horsepower was not an issue. The Mishimoto one looks fine, but the radiator cap doesn't fit quite right in my opinion, and some of the welds are a bit iffy. They'll probably write to me for that, but and I think they're too thick. It's impossible to do any work at the front of the engine. The fans kind of touch things, and the hose is the standard brad, if it's in good condition, is perfect. And one of the weird advantages of the standard radiator is if you're starting to get head gasket issues, then a good way of spotting that is seeing, like, looking down the side of the radiator and seeing whether the sides are bowing out slightly. That will show you whether you've got possibly some pressure issues. Get a map around, it's good. 1.2 bar boost, full throttle. Yeah, that's about right. Probably down to the spring in the 2-port. Might be down to the spring in the wastegate and the fact that it is on a 2-port boost solenoid. Yeah, they always boost more in cold weather. You know, Subarus and turbo cars in general love cold air, and you know, it's fabulous out there at the moment. Oh, well, the forest dress, yeah, that's all it is. Power station and Litchfield are right next door to each other back in the day. All you're buying is an ECU that was mapped for a different car. There was no advantage for that over the one that's in the car at the moment. Always been 1.5 bar hour idle, 1 bar when oil is about 100 degrees, 1040, 6 bar at speed. Yeah, that seems a little bit low, but different oil pressure gauges read different oil pressure. Might be an idea to put another gauge on there, like a manual oil pressure gauge, and just verify that one is reading better or more accurate. That seems a little bit low to me. 1 bar in particular would be bringing warning signs up to me. Subaru Life, how much power, maximum power and torque can we get from an SJ Forester? It depends how much money you got, really. Ultimately, you can get them to make whatever power you want. It just depends on how many pound notes or dollars you want to throw at it, I'm afraid. Boom, boom, boom. Shit, you got a Mishimoto rad. Yeah, I'm not a fan of those Mishimoto rads. I think we got 4 of them out the back of the unit that were taken off cars because they were leaking, or because the radiator cap doesn't fit, or various issues with them. Putting the standard rad back in, everything fits better. Right, RCM headers and up pipe. Oh god, I'll get another call from Ollie Clark saying stop costing me money. No, they're like 700 odd quid, and they won't produce more power compared to a standard set of headers that you port a little bit for that sort of horsepower. Yes, they look shiny for a while, but they're underneath the engine. You're not going to see them. The ported headers, they don't crack. Over the years, I have cracked numerous sets of those GT spec headers, like the RCM or lateral or wherever. They're all the same. They're all made probably in the same factory. And when they're 700 quid a pop, throwing 3 sets of those away is quite expensive. It's a bit of a waste of money. For 450 horsepower, standard headers, ported, perfect. And RJ will be able to port those out for you, no problem. Koyo Rad, yeah, they're right, but I just find they're a little bit thick, and it's difficult to get to hoses and things. So, right, R5 be good enough to use with paddle shift. I would need to double check the spec sheet on the Haltech R5, but I would have thought it would be quite easily. Right, we are at the end of this. I'll just pick up the last couple of questions. Right, is it worth upgrading the standard brake caliper to 4-pot STI Gold Brembo on the classic front and rear setup? Yeah, the classic GC8 brakes aren't up to much. So if you can get a hold of the Brembos, then for decent money, then do it. Be worth doing it. Send them down to Godspeed, get them refreshed, refurbed, painted whatever colour you want, and you're good to go. They're more than good enough, but you'll need wheels that fit over them. So if you got the right wheels, 17s or 18s, it should fit over those. You've got a rare set of equal length Sims headers. Oh, Neil, they're actually really good in my opinion. I like those. Although I should say they are absolutely shit. I'll give you a tenner for them. Yeah. Is it worth fitting? Yeah. I love the sound of the Subaru Burble, but the JDM equal length header sound I think is better if you've got an engine that can use the revs. On the Forester STI, because it's 2.5, you haven't got the rev limit to make that like the JDM equal length sound that Hawkeye STI, JDM Hawkeye STI with an 8,500 rev limit with those equal length headers sounds epic. But a 2.5 possibly not. I've got Mishimoto on the Forester, the Black Forester STI. I haven't used the Koyo Rad. Kyle's got one on his, or Neil's got one on his. I trust what he's saying, that it's good. Personally, I'd put a standard one on. Right. Do I make videos of me mapping everybody's cars? No. Right. When I'm making videos of me mapping cars, it kind of doubles, if not trebles, the time that it takes to do the job. Which is fine if I've got one car in that day and I can I can do that. But on a busy day, I haven't got the time to do that. And I don't think that people, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think people want to see me mapping everyone's cars. I want a video to actually serve a purpose. So, you hopefully get something from watching the video, i.e. this video is about this, that and the other, and to demonstrate this point, here is a JDM STI. Do JDMs need mapping for UK fuel, etc., etc., rather than just the process of this is me mapping another car. I'm not wanting to show off and saying, look at all these cars I'm mapping. It's just cars that I'd like to video, and when I've got the time available to do it, and if they give me permission to. But it's yeah, it's not everyone's car. Rev limit from STI to WRX Hawk, I think there's about 200 RPM different. The STI Hawk is 6.9, I think the WRX is 6.7. It might be 6.5, but either way, there's no point hitting that limit because the power's way gone by then. Right. I think that is the end of it. So if you got any other questions, chuck it in the comments and I will reply as soon as I can. And I will see you in the next video. There'll be a video going out Saturday morning this week, not the random Friday afternoon one that I did last week. It'll go out Saturday morning. So yeah, see you then.